The other facet of foreign policy that needs discussion right now, Iran, because Iran right now is saying that they are the victor in nuclear talks, thanks in part what the Republicans did this week. So let's welcome back to MidPoint, a U.S. Army veteran who focuses on the Islamic world from the website MoniWatch.org. Timothy Furnish joins us today. Tim, always a pleasure to talk to you.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Tim, let me get your opinion first of all on what happened. This is the letter written by the Republican lawmakers to the government of Iran, basically saying that don't let the president fool you because we still have to take action here of any peace deal, any possible nuclear deal. Do you think they overstepped themselves or did they do the right thing?
I think that they did the right thing, but maybe they were a little crass in doing it. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a lowly PhD. I'm not sure whether the constitutional rubric about advising consent for treaties applies to this. But I think it's also pretty disingenuous of the president to pretend that his party hasn't done the same thing in the past to Republican presidents. So I would say maybe on the substance, Ed, I would agree with them, but on the process, I might have some problems.
Knowing the way that Iranian government works, though, do you think it really has any impact whatsoever? Because it would seem as if the Iranians, first of all, they follow the news like everybody else does. They know the discourse that goes on here in America right now. They know what's happening. So is this letter really going to make any change whatsoever, in your opinion, in how they would approach the nuclear talks?
How the Iranians will approach
Yes.
it? Not a bit. Not a bit. And for that matter, Ed, as you and I have discussed before, I don't think the administration has a snowball's chance in Hades of slowing down, much less stopping the Iranian nuclear program.
Now, we talked about, and I mentioned this a couple of moments ago, the foreign minister and the chief negotiator says he has declared victory for his country already in the nuclear talks, says that no matter how the negotiations end, Tehran comes out the winner because it has established Tehran as a global power broker. Now, that's something we really haven't talked about much. Giving Iran just a little bit, making them seem like they're a little more self-important in the Middle East, giving them just a little nudge that makes them seem like they're big boys and big players on the stage now. That's important, isn't it, when it comes down to the Middle East, the Middle Eastern world, and a lot of those people who look and decide who the real power is?
Yes, I mean, clearly Iran harbors delusions of grandeur about the Middle East in general. If you go back in Islamic history, yes, or I should say even pre-Islamic history, it was true that the Persians, before even they were Muslim, ruled much of the Middle East. But they always fought against other powers in the Middle East, particularly against Sunni powers. So I think Iran clearly seems to sort of mix a great sort of nationalistic ego with a bit of insecurity. And you're exactly right, I think, to identify the fact that they get from the United States, or particularly from the Obama administration in this instance, they get sort of legitimacy in terms of negotiating with the major power in the world.
Tim, a lot of this discussion has come around to the nuclear bomb possibility for Iran. And again, as you hear the Republicans talk about, and you hear many people who know what the Iranians are like, they'll say this eventually will lead to that. That's what they want. But I read this weekend a number of different columnists, strategists, who say that Iran really doesn't want the nuclear bomb. We're supposing that, and we're not correct. What's your take?
No, I think they undoubtedly want nuclear weapons for reasons that you and I have discussed before. Two primary reasons. One is regime insurance, because again, they see that North Korea has nuclear weapons, no one will touch them. And secondly, in order to have more weight in the region to throw their weight around. I don't agree with the idea that they don't want nuclear weapons. I think they clearly want nuclear weapons. Now, where I disagree with some on my side, as you know, is I don't think they'll use them.
Okay, now wait a minute. Let's get to that, because if they have it, and let's be very frank here, the Iranian government, not the Iranian people, but the government itself sometimes has really got some people who are not playing with a full deck of cards, to put it very mildly here. So is it not just that mere possibility that you put a nuclear bomb in the hand of a madman that sooner or later, and I hate to go back to the old 1960s idea, I almost feel as if we're going to revisit Dr. Strangelove here in a moment, but somebody is going to be stupid enough, crazy enough, whacked enough one day just to go ahead and put his finger on the button and blow somebody away.
Well, I know that's conventional wisdom. It goes back to, as you pointed out, the doctrine of MAD, Mutual Assured Deterrence, which was from the Cold War of the U.S. and the Soviet Union. We each had 40,000 nuclear weapons, and we wouldn't use them because the other civilization would cease to exist. Again, Ed, as you and I have discussed, I don't think that sort of thinking applies to the Iranians. I don't think the idea that they're not rational applies to them. I think they are quite deterred by the fact that Israel has probably 100 nuclear weapons. And they know if they were to use one on Tel Aviv, that Iran would cease to exist. And I think the Ayatollahs are way too wedded to their wealth and power to risk that.
Tim, let me get your attention on something else here. Dennis Kucinich, the former congressman, 16 years in the Congress, wrote an open letter to members of Congress today about this authorization to use military force and what they're discussing today in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He said there were 10 reasons why Congress should not grant the president this authority, and his number one sort of caught me. He says ISIS is not a threat to the U.S. homeland. Now, wait a minute. We're told by a lot of people that it is a threat. Some people even say that ISIS is in every one of the 50 states in America right now. Is he maybe getting it right? Are we overplaying this card a little bit?
Well, other than his friendship with Viggo Mortensen, I don't think Dennis Kucinich gets anything right. But I think that...
Okay, I think you just pretty much answered the question, but please go ahead and opine.
I think that... the term that's usually used in this context, Ed, of course, is existential threat, correct? I would agree that ISIS is not an existential threat to the United States because existential means the cause sometimes to cease to exist. Does that mean they're not a terrorist threat? Of course not. In all of their Davic magazines, which I've analyzed in depth, they call for Westerners in the U.S. and other Western countries to attack in the name of their caliph, to attack Western policemen, Western military, Western civilian targets. They're clearly a terrorist threat. What I wouldn't agree with, however, and maybe he's saying this in his usual, Kucinchian nebulous way, is that ISIS is not, at this point in time, an existential threat. I think that's true. Now, would ISIS use a nuke on the United States if they could? I have no doubt. I have no doubt they would. But at this point in time, we have no indication they have such power.
Tim, I got to tell you something. Out of all the times that we've talked, you have just really hit a note because you've now got a brand new term here, which I think we're going to have to use from now on, Kucinchian way of doing things. And I don't think anybody has put it quite so well when it comes down to Congressman Kucinich, who sometimes, let's just leave it at that. Let's just say that sometimes. That's fair, right?
Even a stop clock is right twice a day, Ed.
Blind squirrel, acorn, is that what happens here? That's what we're talking, right? Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Tim, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show and get your perspective on it. I'm sure we're going to talk again because this is not going to end anytime soon. Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome.
All right, take care. Poor Congressman Kucinich. He doesn't get no respect at all. All right, to matters of national import, especially a savvy political insider who's seeking to blow pure smoke in the eyes of American voters and just might succeed come November 2016. That and much more when we continue right here on MidPoint.